Hello and welcome to Borrow My Belief, podcast that's designed to inspire you to open your mind up, listen to other points of view, and see other ways of being that are out there in the world. And today I've got a friend who goes by many names. I call him Christopher, some call him Moss, and I think Maximus as well. I know we're
Yeah.
going to have the most incredible, interesting conversation. So we've had a little chat. We're going to touch on manifestation, but I think I asked how I should introduce this man, and he said a man who burns sage. So I think probably the best thing to do is if you introduce yourself, Chris, and then give a little bit of your background that's brought you to the place you're at now, and give us a little bit of where you're at now and how you live your life, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Thank you, Joanne. Well, yeah, everyone's idea of a little bit is different, but I'll try and give you a little bit. Um, I I've been through okay, now I currently have some work that pays the rent, which is building saunas, and what that takes up about 30% of my time, and my I'm a spiritual practitioner 100% of the time.
Mm.
Leading up to this, I had a business, a bag shop in Angel in London for 20 years and cooked before that. But I went through 7 years of loss of everything that I thought I was living for, which was extremely painful, but extremely liberating.
Mm.
Um, and I can't think of how the universe, if it wanted to, could have designed a better process for me to lean into trust, which is basically where I am.
Mm. So, when you say this 7 years of loss, I recognize that myself, having been through something myself. Some people call that a dark night of the soul. And for people that are listening, there might be somebody going through that. I was finding it really quite difficult, or somebody was at the tip of that. How would you describe it?
Well, again, that's a big answer to that question because it fluctuated for me. It fluctuated between disorientation because it's loss of attachment. Except you're not sitting in a cave meditating; you're actually just living your life, losing the things that you love involuntarily, and so it it was very fluctuating. Um, but periods of great uncertainty, identity crisis. Um, I I I used stroke abused substances for sections of it, which were a great help in some respects, and also a symptom of some of the things I needed to heal in other respects. Um, but how? Yeah, the question was, how does a long night of the soul? How would I describe it? I guess I can best describe how I felt in it by the fact that my whole life is now dedicated to being the person I wish I could have met while I was going through it. So if anybody is going through that, they're welcome to reach out to me.
Well, I'm going to put in the description, I'm going to put how they can reach out to you because you've got a website, you do donation based work, and we will explain that later in the podcast. And you've also got your Instagram. But picked up on a few things that you said in there because
Yeah.
I've been through something myself different to you, but similar kind of length of time. For me, it was, and we can go backwards and forwards and chat about this. For me, it was, like you said, a loss of attachment, being attached to what's the way I see it is being attached to what I thought I wanted according to what I learned in society. And so the marriage ended, the big house went, left. I did it all myself, actually. It wasn't taken away from me. I was more intuitive and knew I had to do it. To I had to strip away everything to rebuild myself, kind of. It's not quite like that. Whereas some people have it done to them. It happened through circumstances.
I was incredibly resistant,
Were you having it done to you, person? Yeah.
dragged, kicking and screaming.
So as loss, was it similar to me in that marriage, home, career?
Relationships with the people I loved most, um, of various descriptions, and and yeah, my business, and but I think the stuff that's really difficult is the bits of my image I was attached to, the bits of my ego image that I was attached to, and consequently all of the people around me were attached to. So they had to go through, okay, is this still the same person? Now these behaviors have changed. So that's also incredibly undermining. Like people, people don't like change very much, and they don't like you to change that much. But now it's great, and I've still got loads of my old friends, and the segue has been, it now looking back, it feels much smoother than it felt at the time.
Yeah. I mean, when you're going through these things, it's hard because going back to that ego bit, I think for me, that's twofold. Only this week, I have this practice that I do and I have been doing for quite some time now that our mutual friend taught me, reflecting on a Friday evening, going into Saturday and looking back on the week. And in the last 2 weeks, I've become aware of an aspect of my personality that's not serving me and others. And in this world, we would call that a shadow or an unconscious aspect. It's an
Yeah,
ego.
yeah.
Uh, and the shame when it's been unconscious. So it's unconscious. I've learned not to blame myself once I see it. But the shame that comes with, oh my gosh, that's behavior that I've displayed that's not serving people, and then having the choice, then now it's being seen, to go, right, okay, well, I don't need to behave like that anymore. I can call that
I,
out. I don't need to behave like that.
Yeah, and you can go in, I think, as well. Like you can go in and where does that behavior come from? Why was I hiding it from myself? And like the feeling of shame almost certainly comes from a wound,
Mm.
which is why it turned into a bit of shadow in the first place. And for me, the real magic of that wonderful process, which is obviously really difficult, is coming out the other side. Then you find, if you can find the forgiveness for yourself for your former self for behaving like that, you find forgiveness for everybody else you ever meet who's behaving like that. And that's how self-forgiveness is so tied to forgiveness of all.
Yes. Oh wow. I knew this was going to be a good conversation. So let's break this down so that somebody who has not come across this type of conversation before can understand it. Because I think we were going to talk about manifestation, and I think this aspect is really key when, so to me, manifestation can be manifesting your dream car like you taught on these manifestation cars and pretending you've got the steering wheel and it works. But for me, now after being doing that for 33 years, almost 34 years, that type of thing, and having had all those things and enjoyed all those things, for me, manifestation now is more the stripping down of the ego that's not serving so that I'm becoming more in service to myself and others in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of my cautions about the early stages of manifestation is that, magic is real. Where you put your intention with sincerity is what the universe will listen to. And so, yeah, tripping that from, you know, we can't help being brought up in a materialist paradigm. And by materialist, I don't necessarily mean money. I mean just um, the materialist paradigm influences all of our thoughts. Um, this sort of objectification of other, and um, and so putting the intention, basically turning the intention inward, and basically wanting to be a better person and better, and it is a form of manifestation because your intention attention is the currency. So if you're putting your intention and attention on exterior things to obtain, but by definition, there is subject object in that. But once you get to a point of oneness, and understanding of that, and non-duality understanding, then actually it's right. I need to sort this thing out so that I can do that.
An inside out job. What comes up
It's
for
an
me,
inside out. It's great. Yeah.
inside out job. What comes to me there is because when I first started on the manifestation train, should I say, I was 22 and I read books like The Magic of Thinking Big, Think and Grow Rich, and all these types of books. And honestly, it worked. Manifestation, like you said, magic is real, and I got everything, literally everything I wanted. I then moved on to looking around and going, but I'm not happy inside. Then moved on to this loss of attachment thing, and stripping all that away. But like I said, I did it myself, and now I've come to this understanding that we're always manifesting, always, and
Yeah.
often unconsciously.
Yes.
And where am I think for me now is if I'm going to manifest, because I always am, where am I manifesting from? What is my intention? And is there a learned behavior that makes me want something, but it's not actually good for me and it's not actually good for other people ultimately.
Absolutely, and so that's key to why increasing the level of thought purity, if you like, because I mean I've been through some things in the last few years where I would say people acted out of their own wounds in ways that ended up being a bit unfair to me, and being on this path of realizing the power of my thoughts, it's like trying not to think negative thoughts about those people, like trying not to put that out there because that's manifestation too. Even just a vengeful thought or a hateful thought, that intention goes into that. And so yeah, that that mind discipline and wound healing is kind of central to having a purity of manifestation. And then, like you say, it's like you just do it without doing it. It's just
Hmm.
your sort of your interaction with the universe.
And that's when synchronicity comes in. But I've written some notes so I can take, there's so much that you're saying, there's so much gold in it. But for anybody listening, how would, because some of this is going to be new to people, and then we're on so many levels here. There's going to be people who've done manifestation and various things, and this is taking them to the next level. But there's going to be other people that it is really quite new to them. If you were to describe about thoughts in a way so people can understand, I mean, I understand, but a lot of people don't realize the power in a thought and then what goes on and the conditioning of the mind. What would you say to help somebody understand?
Wow. Okay. Prepare for a thesis. No, prepare for a very, very poor Brady. Um, oh, what a box to unpack. I, I guess there's I guess there's two things I'd want to bring into that conversation. One is again symptomatic of the materialist paradigm. We have such a weak conception of the energetic realm, and yet we're very aware of the field in physics. We're very aware that there is an energetic realm, and thoughts are not material. Thoughts are on the energetic realm. So thought forms. Every thought we ever have, it's so much more vast than this material realm. Even the best of physics is that material realm is 5% of the universe.
Mm.
Every thought you have goes into the energetic realm. Think that same thought often enough, and if it's about something or someone, it kind of has a target. Um, and think a thought often enough, and be that a thought that's beating yourself up. Then that thought can gather enough energy to have an agency,
Yeah.
to become, to have and to almost be inspirited in and of itself as a thought form. Is this? I don't know if I've already gone off too far.
Oh no, this is amazing.
Um,
Yeah.
and then the other thing I'd like to bring is that if somebody hasn't meditated before, it's really one of the big drops for me, at least early on in meditating, was the realization of how little control I had over my thoughts.
Yeah.
That they were emerging and happening to me much more than anything else. So, in terms of the thought control, learning to allow them to pass through and to be able to quieten it, and obviously then in terms of the hemisphere conception, then you allow once you quieten the left, you allow the right brain or to connect. But in terms of thought discipline, yeah, that realizing how many lazy thoughts we have, how much of that happens unconsciously. And so if we don't address our wounds, if we don't go into our dark places, that are the places that are generating, filtering these thoughts into negative thoughts, then it's very hard to control those lazy, absent-minded thoughts.
Yeah.
Um,
I've first of all, in my book, I've written about the best thing that you can do is central to everything is to be present. And I've talked about how people think they can't meditate. I've done a YouTube video on this. So you think you can't meditate. But because people think, the question I get so often and what people come to me with is, I can't meditate because my mind's still going. And I think a lot, or I'm getting emotion. What people don't understand is the point of meditating is so that you can become the witness and watch those thoughts and not be those thoughts and watch those emotions pass through your system. And it's only through sitting through the uncomfortable of thatness of that then you realize you are not your thoughts. And then you realize that your thoughts are just most of it is kind of nonsense. When I first started meditating 6 years ago, and still notice every now and again my brain saying, I want my mummy, I want my daddy, right? And here I am at 55 years old. And sometimes that's triggered in me. And I know it's because I had to go and live with different families when I was little, but it's there anyway. It's there. And it's about observing that and seeing what you're saying to. When you said about vengeful thought, I discovered that was aimed at myself all the time. That
yeah,
I was doing that to myself. It was more about myself than other people, for me anyway. And then once you become aware of those thoughts, then you can do something about it, right? You
yeah,
can. I've been doing a program called Mind Powers. First of all, I worked on the emotional realm, and then I moved to this thoughts. And I've been doing this program called Mind Powers for a year now. A year went in March, and a year I'm still. It's not something you can just turn off or change overnight.
no,
Deliberately, I've been doing this for a year, and my perception is I'm only just getting to a point where my thoughts are changing and I'm able to direct my thoughts more towards a life that is more conducive with kindness and what I want.
yeah. It takes a long time because I think there's two. It's a two-pronged attack. Initially, you can observe the thought and prune it like a plant. Like, actually, no, I'm not going to think that anymore. But
Mm,
to really get to the root, then you've got to do the deep work that takes a long time. Of where that thought actually comes from, what wound is generating that thought, what trauma experience. So it's kind of two pronged. One is like CBT, like changing like disciplining the habit.
yeah.
But then it takes a long time because you've got to do the healing work too.
Yeah, well, let's look at that healing work because it isn't as simple as just the thought. So what I noticed when I first started doing this myself, because I said I worked in the emotional realm first, many years ago when I had therapy, was these thoughts and these were addictive, and then I realized they had an emotion behind them.
Mm.
And once that emotion's there with the thought, it can be very addictive, and you can lose yourself in that. And before you know it, you've become unconscious for quite some time. And it's about going to, like you said right at the beginning of when we started talking, where did it come from? What happened as a child? What's the energy behind it, isn't it?
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's my conception of it is that actually thoughts are rationalized emotion.
Mm.
And so for some reason, either an event or something has made you feel a certain way, and that's triggered a wound, and some energy is coming out from fractal deep from some core wound, and your mind has to find a reason for that. And quite often, it's the person in front of you. But it's like,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
I get that because usually what I find now is if if I have a daily practice now so I can catch myself, but if I find now that if I'm blaming somebody else for something in my mind, because we often or judging somebody else because we often don't speak the judgments out, do we? If I can go to where I'm judging somebody else, it's often a wound inside of me that really needs some care and attention. But for those of people that don't really understand what a wound is, I'd really like to unpick that a little bit because it involves a trauma that happened in childhood. So how would you describe that?
oh, so I can only describe my conception. But I think in terms of what you're talking about, I think Gabor Mate is great. It like I think the whole personality, if you like, that we have in the first half of life, in the ego part of life, whatever, it's formed from response to stimulus, and we form stronger responses to threatening stimulus. So in early life, if we have threatening stimulus and learn a reaction to it, or if we have repeated, then we're we're storing that up for all situations that make us feel anything like that and becoming triggerable. It's like so. I don't. I see the whole idea of wounds as it's a malfunction of a healthy personality formation, of a healthy energetic immune response. It's like this situation turned out to be frightening. I'm going to look out for that situation in the future.
Yeah.
This so and then it becomes too much. So and then one of the problems I think becomes that when turning and facing the emotions of those original wounds, we tend not to do that. So then all gets jammed down, and so they get full of stuff that then later leaks out. This is my conception of it. This is not hard science. This is my conception of it. I would say that I'm compelled by multiple lifetimes, as well as DNA story, the soul's multiple lifetimes.
Yeah.
And I think right how out there to go, but I think that you have ancestral wounds that energetically precipitate events in your life, and they can be different, the DNA story or your soul story, but they precipitate events in this lifetime. So almost always, as far as I'm concerned, there is the story back to childhood, which psychotherapy is very good at ways of helping. But then there is the story past that. You have ancestors to heal. There's a whole line to heal, as well as your own soul story. So yeah, that's a big nutshell answer.
Yeah, that's threefold. My mum passed away actually at the end of last year and became very aware of the ancestral wounds.
Yeah.
I'm going to put a link in the comments along with your website for Gabo Mate as well and his book because I think that's really good reading for anybody who's interested. His work's really good, I think.
Gabor mate is a gateway drug to shamanism.
I told right. So, well, let's go there. So you went from we've done that. We know that people. Well, I'm going to talk about you went from having your bag shop and being in
Yeah,
that kind of life, and now you do healing. You're a spiritual
yeah,
practitioner. It's
yeah.
really obviously two very different career paths there. And I know you've got your sauna building as well. But let's talk about because my perception, and you can correct me, is you've done all this work on yourself, you've had all this loss, you've come more to the truth of who you are, and now you feel called to serve others, and this is what your spiritual journey is, in service to others.
Yeah, I'm definitely, yeah. I've got whatever my karmic debt to pay off is. I've got it's payment time. Uh, yes, oh, pragmatically, left brain thinking. I want to be the person I wish I'd met in my 20s or in the middle of my long dark night of the soul, and that's what I try to be. But and zooming out on that thought a little bit, we don't have many of those people
Yeah.
in this country, like spiritual leaders. Are you going to go to your vicar? It's like, God bless them. Um, so we because of what we've done um, to our traditions, we basically we severed all of our traditions, what, 400 or 500 years ago. Um, we have a dearth of people to turn to, who have any understanding. I mean, plot me in a traditional culture, and I'm asking all the questions. Um, that's maintained its spiritual practices. But here, I think I can help to provide a framework, because we're at such a low base of understanding. So I actually forget what the oh yeah. So I'm trying to fill a gap that can't really be filled in, because we don't live in a society anymore. We live in an economy, and for I would imagine the entirety of human evolution, at least a good portion of it, in the tribe, in the group, there would have been somebody who was a spiritual elder.
Yeah.
Everybody would have had their role. And we don't have that in our communities now. And it's one of the reasons I live where I live, which is back where my shop was, because it's been impressed on me by my Mongolian teacher that this is a community role. That doesn't mean the spiritual community. That means your community.
Yeah.
It's that's who you're supposed to be there for. So that's where I am and what I'm doing. I can't remember the original question, my darling, but I just flowed off.
You give me lots to think about there, because well, first of all, when I met you, we had that discussion about me being in the corporate role, and the you
Yeah.
service wherever you are. So we both lived amongst more the spiritual communities, and I actually had you really helped me around about October last year, when I was in the depths of a situation that had really stretched me to my limit. And you were really, really helpful in helping me, what's the words? Ground myself and level out, when I'm trying to put it in more layman's terms rather than spiritual terms. Ground myself. So I'm trying to explain to people what you can do for people, because you do have your website, and you do it donation based. And from my own point of view, you've really helped me. And it was when things had got on top of me. I'd had a life circumstance that was really sore. I was already a bit further down my spiritual path for me, but you helped ground me and bring me back to a sense of equilibrium.
Well, that's very nice to hear. Um, I, I, to respond to that, I try to be as grounded as possible. I
Mm,
don't think spirituality is separate from life. It's not a separate community, and it's not separate from life. The sacred is absolutely everywhere.
yeah,
And and that includes football stadiums, council estates, it include in nightclubs. It's everywhere. And so it's almost like I feel like we've created another duality between spiritual community and regular community.
yeah.
And so that's lovely to hear. It's lovely to meet you too. We both had a real impact on each other. Um, but yeah, that's great because it's like it's hitting the sweet spot. It's like practical animism, practical spirituality is every day. That's exactly what I want to
Yeah. And
be helping with.
can you explain to people about shamanism and what shamanism is and what I know that's another big question. So
No, this is a good one because I feel I can do a service to my Mongolian teacher and her community. So, um, shame. There are not many shaman in this country, including me. I'm not one either, although I am training under one. Um, it is a very specific skill set. It's a word that comes from Siberia, northern Mongolia, for a very specific skill set of a male practitioner. And Russian anthropologists used that word for any spirit work, and then that just caught on in academia. And now every man, woman, and dog is doing something shamanic.
mm,
And of course, that's now common usage. But I think to honor the Mongolians, that it's really important we're aware of where it comes from, and that half of the vast majority of the usage doesn't make any sense to them, and they kind of want their word back. They're not going to get it back, but I feel that it's important that like it involves full possession of your body by a healing spirit,
mhm.
and you can't do that's and a spirit with which you work on and has probably worked with your family for a long time, and a spirit with which you work incredibly closely. And so that's the answer to that. And that's not to say let's call people who are not shaman, in that very specific sense, which is very much from that part of the world, people from the Americas. There is nothing less significant about being an animistic healer or a because you can't be a shaman without being an animist. There are other words for healing people, medicine men and women,
Mm.
and they do powerful work in slightly different ways. So the very specific question involved in the word shaman, I feel compelled on behalf of my teacher just to explain that. But in general terms, in common usage, um, it's how would I summarize it? Working with working with the energetic realm, agency within the energetic realm, spirits, if you like, to bring about positive change. Not always, but hopefully in my case, positive change in the material realm.
Yeah. And there's a lot of working with nature, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Working with working with um, in my own animism is really important to me in the concept of it. That being in right relation with your surroundings, whether that be nature or whether that be urban, being in right relation with the invisible beings and the non-human elements of your environment, the benefits that can bring to your life, making offerings, acknowledgement is an offering.
Yeah.
Like the tree outside your house that you never look at, tell it it's beautiful. Honestly, treat your local area as though everything has beingness. Now I'm starting to sound crazy. I'm losing the woo adjacent crowd here.
This is so
But
perfect. So I just want to go back to something that you said right at the beginning of, because I don't know what animism is, but something right at the beginning of when we were discussing, you said a certain percentage was the physical realm and the rest was the energetic realm, which makes absolute sense if we even look at the conscious and the subconscious mind. It kind of mirrors that. You said only a
yeah,
percentage of our experience. Was it 5%?
so it's 5% is the matter that we can see according to physicists. They wouldn't, by the way. I'm not expecting any physicists to back up much of what I'm talking about. But yeah, and then a significant portion of the rest is what we call dark energy and dark matter because we can't see or detect them.
Mhm.
And my observation is always, I wonder what's going on in there, and I wonder if it's really dark. Um,
What is animism?
so animism is I don't call it a belief. Animism is the knowledge, the lost knowledge that everything is beingness,
Yeah.
that life is beingness, that life is a process of beingness, and we just happen to be a very separated part of it with sentience. It's not the idea that you can talk to a stone, although you might be able to. Give it a try. Have a listen first. Don't do all the talking. Um, but it's an awareness that everything has beingness, and that you're in relationship with it. And your local park is a being without hands. Go and pick some of the litter up. See if nice things happen to you that day, um, or make offerings. And the concept of beingness, it's like I can no more understand what it's like to be a tree than the tree can understand what it's like to be me. But there is, it's lived a lot longer than I have. It has all of those stories, all of those things that have happened around it. There's some kind of storage and formation of that energy, and the ability to maybe get some of that. And then also there's the whole more complicated aspect of the lower world and the Plato's realm of forms, where of the sort of archetype, the archetype of the tree is also an archetype of the type of plant is also a different thing. But sorry, we were on animism, and animism is relational. It's everything is beingness, and I'm just an expression of that beingness.
That really rings true to me. The more I pause, the more I'm still, the more calm I am, the more I practice being rather than doing. It's really, well, two things. More gets done, which is interesting. Well, more gets done that's in an alignment with me and for me. That
Yeah.
that's really interesting. But the other thing is, the more I'm in a meditative state, the more presence I am, the breath, whatever brings me to presence, the more enjoyable life becomes. I notice my surroundings, relationships with people are more peaceful. I notice patterns within myself, which is healing. And to me, then I know there's always synchronicity, but then I notice synchronicity, and then I'm able to respond to that synchronicity. And you've just captured what I believe is the true essence of manifestation.
Uh, uh,
Working with everything in oneness, in service to all, including myself.
exactly. Looping back to the early start of the conversation, it's like that early stage of manifestation is like dualist manifestation. It's like I'm separate from everything and I want stuff,
Yeah.
and then hopefully it evolves into an animistic, non-dualist conception of manifestation, which is I'm in relation to all of this stuff. It's
Yeah, perfect. You've put that perfect. You said at the beginning, trust. You're in a place of trust now. And
yeah,
that's for somebody who's lived in a Western society, and again, it's my perception, having because I know I can only say from my own journey, this surrender, this trust thing, sometimes you can feel like you're dying falling into that. And that's where I am, because there's fear, isn't there? And then there's love and trust. And I noticed that fear was driving a lot of my early manifestations, driving a lot of my actions, driving a lot of the way I am, up until I learned how to trust and just to witness the fear and then move from a place of love instead. Is that what you mean, or is it something different?
yeah, it's what I mean. I mean, I'll be honest. Working for donation is there's a lot of trust in there.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to bring up the hummingbird, which is a Peruvian. Um, at least my awareness of hummingbird. In the West, our idea of ambition is seen as so positive, right? That person's ambitious, um, and making investments and whatever. It's like all of that is a fear of the future.
Mm.
Like ambition, by definition, is that today isn't. I don't want to be like this in the future.
Mm.
I want to acquire more. And our idea of accumulation, our idea of safety, is to accumulate enough so that if something bad happens in the future, we've got enough.
Mm.
What hummingbird does about abundance wise, or at least the medicine of it, which is what I would think about my position of trust, is, and it's, and it's quite, I realize my privilege that goes into this, being able to do this. It migrates twice a year, the hummingbird, 3,000 miles, with tiny wings that are made for hovering, a massive beak that can only eat one type of thing, and no fat reserves.
Mm,
And it does it on the basis that it will find enough of what it needs to eat tomorrow.
mm.
And so it's a hummingbird abundance of it's not, you don't have to test it and be reckless. It's like, but keep stepping up and do what you know is the right thing, and you will get enough of what you need in the coming times.
Yes. And it's not until you step onto that path that you realize that. And I know ours has been different. You had yours forced on me. I've done mine through a reckless jumping off cliffs many times, which has been very frightening. And the more I keep going like that, the more I don't follow fear, the more confidence is happening within me that things will show up. And the more present I become, what's really helped me is because of the communities I now um, circulate within, I'm able to watch other people where things show up for them. So that helps me as well. And what I'm finding is, as I step away from my way of being that I used to be, which was very much fear. I had I had £120,000 at one point in my bank account, and I had a scarcity mindset, and I was scared to spend the money. And since then, I've been to hardly anything and had an abundance mindset because it's a state within. And I have clients who think that they've got to attain something to get the life they want. And I really listen to the life they want. And then we unpick everything and we look at everything. And they could already have that life and have had people with open mouths going, oh gosh, they couldn't see they could already have what they perceive they want in the future because they've got to do something to get it. But they
Which
already,
is,
yeah,
it's back to what you said about the it's inside out work, because actually we are so taught that in order to satisfy our feeling of dissatisfaction, then the answer lies outside. Like we have to acquire things. Whereas actually changing the way you view that is internal work.
yeah,
Why do I view it that way? Well, that's again, that's the healing path. That's internal work. So
yeah,
it's the journey within. But both things have come back to the same place.
always. And it's always when I work with clients, and I've worked a lot with myself. When I work with clients, it always boils down to a feeling in the end. It's just a feeling that people are looking for, and we can generate those feelings. Gosh, this has been such an amazing conversation. It's
It's been lovely. It's been very enjoyable.
I have
Anytime.
I have two questions that I ask everybody. Uh,
Okay, great.
one of them you've almost touched on, and I'd be really interested that you expand on this because I've got a feeling where you're going to go. If you could go and speak to a previous version of yourself and you could give them a message, because you've already said that you'd like to think there'd have been someone like you, what one message where would you go, and what one message would you give yourself?
Tough one this. Tough one this, because whilst I'm trying to be the person I wish I'd met in my 20s,
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want to be that person had I met me in my 20s. It's taken a life of um, being in a regular person in a regular community, like doing the things that I did, going to football, playing, going to pubs, for me to really realize that those places don't get access to the kind of thing that I want, as much access as they should. So it's really hard to want to change any of it.
Mm.
So um, it really is, because I'm so happy where I am. I wouldn't want to do it all again. Really. But I'm, I'm actually quite loath to go back and tell him anything. Maybe I go back and say, really enjoy the 10 years Stoker in the Premier League, because they're going to get relegated again and it's going to be rubbish. I reckon I could not do too much damage if I do that.
I guess what you're saying is, do you know, I can always tell where somebody is when they answer that question. That says a lot about you. I guess what you're saying is the only thing you really could say to him is, you're doing perfect, you're on track, you'll be fine.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah. Because it's I, I I'm so clear about my role now, and I think my life defines that role. I can't change anything.
Mhm. Absolutely. And then the last question is for this podcast was designed. I mean, there's people from lots of walks of life listening, and I get comments and stuff. This podcast was originally designed for a previous version of me, let's say. I never, well, it wasn't a previous version of me, it was people around me. I never dreaded going to work on a Monday morning, never. I could never understand why people did because I enjoyed my jobs. But it was designed, it gets released at 5:55 on a Sunday because it's designed for, this is like a previous version of me. The person who's, they maybe the cycle of their life is coming to an end, that feeling where it once served you and there's something stirring inside you that you need to change, but your brain's coming up with all the excuses like, I can't do this because of money, or I can't, the reasons why you
Yeah,
can't change, but yet deep inside, you know it's time. And we both know that if you ignore that niggle deep inside, life will do it for you anyway. It comes up in the
yeah,
form, it comes up in the form of things like a woman who will say to me, my husband had an affair and it was devastating, but 5 years on, I'm so happy, I'm glad he did it. It comes up in that
yeah.
kind of form. So that those people that it's stirring within them, but they don't quite know what to do, and they don't, this that's what it was designed for, to showcase other people who've been through things. I mean, yours is a good one because you went through your 7 years of losing attachment. Some people have leaped like I have. So, what would you say to our viewers if you could impart a piece of wisdom from your own journey? What would you say to anybody watching?
Well, if on that topic, I'm gonna completely steal from another one of my teachers, Alberto. I've the first one because I think it's a great expression. You want to catch God on a whisper, not a shout.
Mm, wow. I'm gonna have to let that one settle with me. So,
You know,
oh,
you
oh,
when disaster hits you, you've missed all your warnings.
yeah,
If you get annoyed every time somebody's late, like irrationally annoyed every time somebody's late, and you always think it's about, well, lateness is a bad thing and they should never be late, and like that. But if you don't see where that comes from, eventually at some point later in your life, that will manifest into a difficult and hard event. Like there there if you can start the journey of looking at your part in things long before you get the kind of kicking I did, which is basically the universe is giving you signs all the way,
yeah.
and you're better listening when it's whispering than shouting. That's the notion.
I've written this down because I love that. And really, in that context, this is again just my perception. God is within. You want to catch your own instinct. You hear people say it. My gut was telling me all along. I had somebody tell me in a cafe last week when the cafe owner uh, were telling me in their last business that their partner fleeced them and it was a disaster. And he said, I knew all along if I'd have just listened to my gut, I knew, and I let it go too far. That kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and there would be other things in there. So, what was motivating him not to listen to his instinct? Was it that he was making lots of money with this person? Was it like I'm not judging the person. I'm saying there will be something that made him not listen to his instinct.
Always.
That, you know,
And that's the healing. And I just want to finish off by saying this beautiful conversation that we've just had is very similar to your healing, except for you would have, because often people don't even recognize you've done healing with them, Christopher. And we've had that conversation before because, and you have, and you've said that it's a year down the line when it takes effect or months down the line. Healing with you is a conversation where you get to unpick what's going on with you internally. And It's not some harsh thing. I would recommend anybody to give it a go if they want to see what's going on with them more unconsciously, then and have a conversation where you get to look and do a dance. This is the man to do that with.
Yeah, I'm a great dancer, to be fair.
Dancer, yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. That was every bit a great conversation. We could probably do a 10 podcasts out of the
Let's do another one soon.
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much. Lovely to chat. See you soon.
Thank you.